How's it going, everyone? Today I'm going to be giving you a little bit of commentary, going through the procedures and the steps that I took to make these two designs you see in front of you here. Two custom t-shirts. In the end, I went with the second design, but I'll tell you the process I went through to make both of them. Okay, so to begin, I began with a very rough outline of the size. This is just to give me an idea of kind of what kind of dimensions I'm going to be working with here. And I also have to make sure it'll fit on the shirt. So after I've done the rough size, what I do is I make a rough pass layer. So this is where I really basically add in some extra detail, but this is not the finished line work. Um, I actually do make a bit of a decision later on that becomes pertinent to the end design. But as you can see here, I'm just adding in some rough details. I'm not trying to get this finished. Just trying to add lines, kind of sketchy looking lines. Very rough, scratchy. It's just to give me an idea of what it looks like. Here I add a little bit of color. I find that adding color usually makes it a little bit easier to see what the finished design is going to look like, and it helps me make a few decisions. Here I start cleaning up the line work. After I start cleaning up the line work, this is when I realize that maybe clean line work on this drawing isn't actually going to look as nice as I thought. It isn't going to translate the way I want it to. So I'm cleaning up the line work here, and then I decide to rapidly try and undo all of my line work clearing up here. But the save states don't go back far enough. So what I do is I add another layer, and I just add a bit more of that scratchiness back. I create another layer on top. This is where I'm doing a bit more refined line work. As you can see, it's not as scratchy, but I'm leaving the scratchy line work in the background. I actually make the decision to, I think, keep a lot of that in for the final design because it adds a nice little bit of shadow and a little bit of detail. So here I'm going over the line work again, making some more decisions, as you can see, adding that thumbnail back in. Yeah, okay, making sure that the color is in the right place. I can do a bit of cleaning up of the line work. In this one I'm adding a little bit more of a bump for that knuckle on the thumb, which I think looks really nice. Making the thumb look a little bit more rounded, a bit more shaped, almost pointed actually at the top, like your thumb if you were to look at that as a reference. Also, I'm adding some of the wrinkles on the bottom of the hand. So if you actually make a fist, you'll see the bottom meaty part of your hand actually wrinkles up quite a bit when you do that. Hands always have a lot of skin folds and wrinkles and stuff like that. It's important to add some of those details in. You gotta watch out though, sometimes it can make the hand almost look like a glove. So sometimes you've got to take a bit of artistic license. Here I'm adding a clipping mask layer. So I make a clipping mask, draw a load of black where I want the shadows to go, and then I reduce the opacity. It's kind of my trick for adding shading. It's a very nice little way of doing it, quick way of doing it, especially with digital. I do the same but with white for the highlights. And here I'm adding in a little bit of cross hatching. I think it's too dark, so what I do is actually pull back the opacity. It still adds a little bit of detail to the design. I think it looks nice. I really like the way the wrist looks. I think the wrist skin and the wrinkles and the veins and the tendons, they really pop. Very scratchy. It's very crisp. Here I'm adding the water. To me, water is not too difficult, especially when you're trying to do it a bit more cartoonish, a bit more stylized. I go in with the black marker pen by DC Tattoos, Sweden's brush set. Very good tool. I always use the marker tool. Once I've done the black lines to indicate a bit of ripples, I actually go over and start adding white. A lot of it is quite heavy white lines, but then I start going in and adding the little smaller ones that you see just to give the water a bit more of a shimmer, a bit more of liveliness, reducing opacity on some of them, adding more white back in. building up layers, kind of like oil painting, but very, very simple version of it. Nowhere near as difficult. Here I'm using a custom brush to fray the edges, because on a t-shirt it's not going to look as good as you think if it's completely squared edges, perfect flat lines. That font, drawn by me, I really liked the way it looked. It really looked punchy, so I kept it as is. I didn't use any other font. Here I'm just going back in, again, clipping mask, drawing in some more black shadows, reducing the opacity, building up those layers. When you have the ability to use layers on Photoshop, you might as well, use the tools at your disposal to get what you want at the end, as long as there's some effort put in, I find. To me, this design it's very sketch, it's very crispy, crunchy, that kind of feel to it. I really like how it looks. This is version 2 though. This is where the thumb is actually is straight in front of you. So here I'm doing the same kind of thing, adding that basic shape, the basic dimensions. Hands are not square, they're often quite curved, quite rounded. But on this design, I took a photo of my hand, so I had a reference of a hand directly in front of me. So I was just using that, and I thought, okay, that looks very much like the reference. But with art, with drawing, with stuff like that, you need to take artistic license. If what you're drawing is exactly like the reference, but when you look at it, something seems off, you need to change something. Artistic license is there for a reason. Use it. Take it whenever you need to. If something doesn't quite look right, maybe it's because it doesn't look good on paper, whereas on a photograph it does look good. So I think something looks weird here, but then I decide, what, I'll add some color. Maybe that'll fix it. And it doesn't. It still looks like a weird hand person, or like some figure with some kind of skin-colored bandage wrapped around his chest. I have no idea what this looks like. So I go, do you know what? I'll move the thumb. I'll rotate the thumb, because my thumb isn't straight usually when I'm giving a thumbs up. And I'm like, okay, that looks a bit better. No, it doesn't. So I draw a lot of hands at work in my free time on the sketch pads. So I thought, you know what? I'll just draw it like I do there. And when I drew that, I was like, actually adding those two chunks of palm made a big difference. Having the thumb sort of more jointed. Then adding the wrist. The wrist isn't a perfectly square. It isn't just a perfect cylinder. As you can see, there's muscles, there's different parts of skin that are there. So I added it to have that, as you can see on the bottom right. Then I add a bit of color and I realize, okay, now I'm onto something. So with this one, I added cross-hatching straight away. I'm trying to get better at cross-hatching, so I use it whenever I can. I do like it a lot. I definitely need to get better with form and reference. However, I wanted this to look like a sketch. I didn't want this to look perfect and clean, and I find a lot of art now, especially with AI, kind of looks a bit too smooth, a bit too semi-realistic. So I thought, I'll keep a lot of the footprints of the artist on this page. I'll keep a lot of the scratchiness of the pen. Doing the same thing as you saw earlier. Clipping mask, black lines, reducing opacity, same with the highlights. I do the same thing, add a bit more line work, a few more wrinkles, dimples in that wrist, a few lines just to make sure that you know that it's not a completely flat and clean item. I forgot to add the shadow under the fingers. You see that on the wrist is completely bright. That is finished it is tweaked in the final drawing. You'll see that, it'll pop up now. Yep, as you can see, I added in the shadow there on the final drawing. But that was the process. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.